Pay attention to what your mind does when you stop leaving it untrained. If you feel like you are always starting but rarely moving forward, the problem is not intelligence, motivation, or lack of information. The problem is lack of consistency. And this is a quiet pain. From the outside, it looks like effort. From the inside, it is dispersion. You begin strong, you feel clear for a moment, and then the structure breaks. Days pass, energy drops, and when you look back, you are still in the same place, just more tired. Notice how common this is. Most people confuse intensity with consistency. They believe one strong day compensates for several weak ones. It does not. The mind does not learn from spikes. It learns from directed repetition. When that repetition is missing, the result is internal exhaustion and the constant feeling of preparing without ever arriving. Observe how this shows up in real life. Someone reads something powerful, feels motivated, promises change, experiences clarity for a few hours. The next day, the same reactions return. Not because the idea was forgotten, but because the mind was never trained to hold that state. Understand this clearly. Clarity without training becomes frustration. Awareness without practice becomes weight. Napoleon Hill taught that the mind operates through dominant habits. He was not talking about random thoughts. He was talking about repeated patterns that turn into identity. Hill explained that whatever you think consistently enough begins to command your decisions without asking permission. And when the mind is not trained daily, it never stays neutral. It always returns to the old pattern. See how this explains effort without results. You do something right today, but tomorrow you are back on autopilot. There is no continuity, no structure, and without continuity, nothing is built. The mind does not change through understanding. It changes through conditioning. That truth can feel uncomfortable, but it is freeing once you accept it. The Bible confirms this directly. Proverbs 23:7. As he thinks in his heart, so is he. It does not say, as he thinks occasionally. It points to a constant inner pattern. Your external life follows your internal repetition, not your intentions, not your words, but the invisible training that happens every day. Now notice something important. Most people do not train their minds at all. They simply react to the day. They wake up, consume news, messages, problems, demands, and allow those inputs to define their internal state. Later, they try to compensate with a motivational quote, a single video, a short prayer. That is not training, that is patchwork. Training the mind daily means taking conscious control of your internal state before the world does it for you. And that is exactly what most people avoid. Not because it is hard, but because it requires continuous decision. Continuous decision is uncomfortable for anyone living emotionally improvised. Napoleon Hill called this mental self-discipline. He taught that success does not come from occasional strong actions, but from the ability to sustain an aligned internal state, even when nothing external confirms it. Hill insisted on this point because he understood something critical. Without daily training, the mind works against its owner. If this feels familiar, it is because the pain already exists inside you. You already know the issue is not lack of content, but lack of consistency. Not lack of faith, but lack of daily direction. Not lack of capacity, but lack of repeated control. Before continuing, write this in the comments right now. I am training my mind to work for me. Do not skip this. Notice what just happened. By writing that, you stepped out of passive consumption and into decision. Most people do not do this. They silently agree and continue unchanged. When you position yourself, even with a short sentence, you begin breaking the pattern of passivity. Now, understand the cost of not training the mind. When daily training is absent, the mind enters economy mode. It repeats old thoughts because they require less energy. It reacts emotionally because that path is familiar. This creates the feeling of being stuck while still working hard. Napoleon Hill warned that an undirected mind becomes fertile ground for fear, doubt, and procrastination. He explained that these states do not appear randomly. They occupy the space left by lack of conscious direction. Where there is no command, there is invasion. Where there is no training, old habits take over. The Bible reinforces this in a practical way. Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything. This is not abstract comfort. It is instruction for mental state. Anxiety is not just emotion, it is untrained attention. It is the mind reacting to scenarios that have not happened. This is where many people miss a crucial connection. Jesus did not speak of faith only as belief, but as sustained internal posture. When he says in Mark 11:24, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, he is pointing to the maintenance of an aligned inner state before external evidence appears. That is training. Not a single request, but a continuous stance. Understand this clearly. Training the mind daily is not repeating empty phrases. It is consciously choosing what you feed, what you cut, and what you reinforce internally. It is noticing automatic thoughts and refusing to follow them. It is holding focus even when the day tries to pull you elsewhere. Napoleon Hill explained that repetition creates belief, and belief creates behavior. Without repetition, everything stays at the level of ideas. And ideas do not change lives, patterns do. Most people collect ideas and grow frustrated because nothing stabilizes. See how this reframes everything. When you understand that the mind needs daily training, you stop blaming yourself for not feeling motivated every day. Training does not depend on motivation, it depends on decision. And decision does not wait for favorable emotion, it creates the path. Here is a critical insight. The feeling of being stuck does not come from lack of opportunity. It comes from internal instability. An unstable mind produces an unstable life. A trained mind produces internal predictability, even in chaotic environments. That is real power. This understanding separates the reactive majority from the conscious minority. Almost no one realizes they are prisoners of their internal state. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Continuing without training now has a visible cost. Exhaustion, repetition, frustration, wasted potential. At this point, even supporting this content takes on a different meaning. When you press like on this video, you are telling the algorithm that this kind of mental direction needs to reach people who are stuck in the same instability. This is not empty engagement. It is clarity competing with noise. The algorithm amplifies what receives a clear signal of value. Napoleon Hill emphasized that a trained mind begins to see opportunities where it once saw obstacles, not because the world changed, but because the internal filter changed. And that filter only adjusts through daily practice, not isolated moments. Jesus lived this practically. He regularly withdrew to align his internal state before acting externally. That was not escape, that was training. He understood that without internal mastery, no external action sustains. See how everything converges to the same point. Training the mind every day is not optional for anyone who wants consistency. It is the invisible foundation of any visible result. Without it, progress happens briefly and collapses. With it, even difficult days produce quiet forward movement. Stay aware of what this is activating inside you now. This is not excitement, it is recognition. And recognition is the first sign that the mind is ready to be directed. Notice how your mind reacts when you don't take daily control. There is a pattern that repeats in the life of anyone who does not train the mind every day. and it becomes obvious the moment you stop lying to yourself. You understand what needs to be done. You agree with strong ideas, yet there is a constant feeling that something keeps slipping away. This is not lack of information. It is loss of internal direction throughout the day. The mind starts aligned and ends scattered. And when this repeats, the result is not just external stagnation. It is internal wear. Pay attention to how this wear shows up. You wake up with some focus, but as the day moves on, small decisions begin to drain you. Messages, demands, other people's problems, noise. By the end of the day, you feel busy but not present. And the next day, everything resets to zero. This cycle creates the sensation of constant effort with no real construction. This is exactly where the pain of lack of mental consistency lives. Napoleon Hill taught that an undisciplined mind becomes a prisoner of circumstances. He explained that without a goal kept alive daily, a person reacts to the environment instead of directing their own path. Hill was not speaking in motivational theory. He was describing a practical law of human behavior. Where there is no sustained focus, automatic dispersion takes over. Understand something crucial. Most people believe training the mind is abstract, almost mystical. It is not. Training the mind means consciously repeating the same internal direction until it becomes a pattern. It means deciding how you will think before the world decides for you. When that does not happen, the mind chooses the easiest route, repeating the past. The Bible describes this clearly in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewal is not an event. Renewal is a continuous process. It is training. It is conscious repetition until the old pattern loses strength. Without that, conformity happens by default. Napoleon Hill reinforced this by comparing the mind to a garden. What is not cultivated deliberately will be overtaken by weeds. He taught that doubt, fear, and procrastination do not need to be learned. They emerge naturally when there is no firm direction. This explains why so many people say they don't know why they lost focus. They never sustained it intentionally. See how this reframes your own life. This is not lack of ability, it is absence of daily internal command. A mind without training is never quiet. It fills itself with noise, and constant noise is more exhausting than hard work. That is why exhaustion without progress is so common. Here is a point most people avoid facing. Most wait to feel motivated in order to align internally, but motivation is an effect, not a cause. Napoleon Hill taught that repeated action generates emotion, not the other way around. Discipline comes before motivation. Anyone who waits for the ideal state to act never builds consistency. Jesus demonstrated this in practice. He did not react to the environment. He withdrew to align his internal state before acting. This was not empty ritual. It was mental strategy. In Luke 5:16, we see that he often withdrew to pray, not to escape, but to sustain clarity and direction. This is internal training, not spiritual improvisation. Now observe how this applies to your real day. Training the mind daily means starting with clear direction and revisiting that direction throughout the day, even when the environment tries to pull you into another state. This is not repeating automatic phrases. It is noticing when the mind drifts and bringing it back. That is active training. Napoleon Hill called this control of attention. He taught that sustained attention toward a goal creates internal coherence. Without it, a person lives fragmented. Some focus here, some there, nothing consolidates. And a fragmented life produces fragmented results. Notice how most people live this way. They try to compensate for lack of training with occasional intensity. One highly productive day followed by several disorganized ones. This does not create foundation. It creates the illusion of movement. And illusion is tiring because it promises more than it delivers. The Bible confirms this principle in James 1:8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Internal inconsistency produces external instability. This is not punishment. It is direct consequence. A divided mind cannot sustain direction. Pause for a moment and recognize something important. Most people never realize they live in this pattern. They simply adapt to the exhaustion. When you begin to see this clearly, a new responsibility appears. Now that you see it, you cannot pretend you do not know. That is why you must position yourself consciously. Write this in the comments right now. I will no longer leave my mind on autopilot. This is not symbolic. It creates a decision marker. Most people write nothing because they prefer not to commit. When you position yourself, you begin leaving the reactive mass and entering the group that directs its own mind. Now go deeper. Training the mind daily changes how you deal with problems. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin responding consciously. This does not remove challenges, but it removes wasted energy. And well-directed energy builds consistent results. Napoleon Hill insisted that daily repetition of an aligned mental state creates a new identity. He taught that over time, effort disappears because focus becomes natural. This only happens through continuous training, not temporary enthusiasm. Notice the invisible cost of not doing this. Every day without training reinforces the old pattern. Every day without internal command strengthens autopilot. And autopilot never takes you where you say you want to go. It takes you where you have always been. This is difficult for many to hear, but necessary. Mental responsibility is not a burden. It is freedom. When you assume daily training, you stop depending on mood, environment, and external validation. You begin operating from the inside out. When this clarity lands, even supporting this kind of content changes meaning. This tells the algorithm that this kind of mental direction needs to reach people who are still trapped on autopilot. This is not about numbers. It is about conscious reach. The algorithm expands what receives a clear signal of practical value. Napoleon Hill taught that a trained mind recognizes value where it once saw distraction. This happens because the internal filter changes. External life responds to the level of internal direction you sustain daily. Stay aware of what is happening inside you right now. This is not excitement, it is recognition. And recognition is the first sign that training the mind is starting to make sense. Understand what changes when mental training stops being occasional and becomes a daily standard. When training happens every day, something quiet starts reorganizing inside you. It is not emotion, it is not excitement, it is not that temporary peak that fades. It is internal structure. The mind begins to recognize a preferred path. Before, any stimulus could pull you off course. Now the stimulus hits and meets resistance. Not tense resistance, but direction. Almost no one experiences this because almost no one sustains training long enough. Notice how most people live. They try to improve, but they are always starting over. Monday feels like a reset, Tuesday slips, Wednesday compensates, Thursday brings guilt, Friday ends in silent quitting. The problem is not the week. It is the absence of a trained mental pattern that carries through the days. Without that, behavior depends on mood, and mood builds nothing durable. Napoleon Hill taught that conscious repetition creates what he called a definitive habit. Not a superficial routine, but a pattern that begins to command decisions without conscious effort. Hill explained that when the mind is trained correctly, it starts working toward the goal even when you are not actively thinking about it. That is mental efficiency. That is internal maturity. See how this shifts the financial, emotional, and spiritual game at the same time. A trained mind does not get lost in noise. It recognizes distractions faster. It cuts them before sinking. It does not negotiate with thoughts it already knows the outcome of. This does not come from willpower. It comes from daily practice. The Bible confirms this principle in Lamentations 3:23. His mercies are new every morning. Many read this as emotional comfort. There is also instruction here. Every morning is a conscious reset point, not to improvise but to realign. Daily mental training begins in this internal alignment, not in heroic decisions. Napoleon Hill reinforced that anyone who does not establish a daily mental ritual ends up living at the mercy of other people's urgencies. He said that a mind without prior direction responds to whatever is loudest. And what is loudest is rarely what builds, it is what drains. Notice how this explains the feeling of being busy and rarely productive. You react all day, but you barely advance. When mental training enters, reaction decreases and conscious response increases. You begin choosing where to place energy, and well-directed energy creates consistency. Jesus made this clear when he said in Matthew 6:33, "Seek first the kingdom of God." This is not a spiritual slogan. It is a priority order for the mind. First internal alignment, then everything else organizes. Reverse that order and the day becomes chaos. Respect it, and even difficult days produce progress. Understand something important. Training the mind daily does not eliminate negative thoughts. It removes their authority. They may appear, but they do not command. That difference changes everything. Most people think they fail because they still think incorrectly sometimes. No, they fail because they continue following those thoughts without questioning them. Training is noticing and redirecting, not erasing. Napoleon Hill taught that a trained mind learns to replace unproductive thoughts with functional ones. He did not speak about fighting the negative, but about occupying space with something stronger. Where sustained focus exists, distraction loses power. This is practical law, not motivation. The Bible reinforces this in Psalm 1:2. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. Meditation here is not passive contemplation. It is keeping the mind occupied with a chosen pattern, day and night. Consistency, continuous training. See how this translates into daily life. When you train your mind, you repeat the same internal direction even when nothing external confirms it. You do not change your internal narrative according to the day. You sustain it. Sustaining creates identity. Over time, you stop convincing yourself. You act from the pattern. Napoleon Hill insisted that identity comes before results. He taught that no one builds prosperity by trying to act like someone they have not become internally. Daily training accelerates this internal shift. You start thinking, deciding, and reacting like someone aligned, even before results appear. Here is the line between the minority and the majority. The majority maintains behavior only while it feels good. The minority maintains because it decided. Emotion becomes a bonus, not the engine. When you understand this, training stops feeling heavy. It becomes part of daily structure, like brushing your mind instead of your teeth. Recognize the cost of not doing this. Every day without training increases emotional dependence on the environment. You begin needing everything to be fine in order to function. That is fragility. A trained mind functions even when the environment does not cooperate. Not through hardness, but through direction. Napoleon Hill called this self-determination. He said that those who develop it stop being pushed by life and start directing it. This does not mean controlling everything. It means controlling yourself. And that is the only real control that exists. Now pause and notice the difference between hearing this and living it. Most people hear it, agree, and continue unchanged. Few accept the responsibility of training daily, especially when no one is watching. That is why most results are average. Not because of lack of potential, but lack of sustained pattern. Be honest with yourself. You already know the cost of mental improvisation. You have felt the exhaustion of constant restarting. Now that this is clear, continuing the same way is no longer innocent. It becomes a choice. Write this in the comments right now. I choose consistency, not improvisation. This kind of positioning creates an internal record. The mind recognizes when you take direction publicly. Most people avoid this because they want to keep the door open for quitting. When you position yourself, you close that door. Now lock this understanding in. Daily mental training creates internal predictability. You know how you will think, react, and decide regardless of the day. This does not restrict you, it frees you. You stop wasting energy deciding the basics and start using energy to build. Napoleon Hill said that sustained clarity saves mental force. He taught that people who decide everything from scratch every day burn out quickly. Training creates internal shortcuts. You already know what you accept, what you cut, and what you reinforce. When this clicks, supporting this kind of content stops being automatic. This like tells the algorithm that this content has real value and needs to reach people who are still trapped in mental improvisation. This is not a small gesture. It is a signal that practical clarity deserves reach. Stay aware of what has shifted in your perception. This is not enthusiasm, it is alignment. And sustained alignment is exactly what daily training begins to build. Notice what happens when a trained mind starts taking leadership over your life. After some time of daily training, something changes permanently. You stop arguing internally about everything. Before, every decision came loaded with doubt, comparison, and mental friction. Now the mind responds faster with less noise, not because problems disappeared, but because there is a clear internal axis. A trained mind does not waste energy trying to decide who it is in every situation. It already knows. This is the line between people who move forward and people who keep circling the same place. Most people negotiate with themselves all day long. I'll do it today. I'll see tomorrow. Now is not the right time. This looks like flexibility, but it is weak direction. A trained mind does not renegotiate basic principles every day. It executes from a pattern that is already set. Napoleon Hill taught that firm decision, repeated internally day after day, creates what he called the invisible force of personality. He said successful people are not more intelligent, they are more decided on the inside. That decision does not appear randomly. It is trained, it is reinforced, it becomes identity. Observe how this changes your relationship with money, time, and opportunity. Before, doubt paralyzed you. Now, you evaluate, decide, and move. A trained mind understands that perfection is not a requirement for action. Sufficient clarity is, and sufficient clarity only exists when the internal state is stable. The Bible confirms this principle clearly. Ecclesiastes 10:2, "The heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left." This is not about morality, it is about internal direction. The wise person has a defined inclination. He does not swing with every wind. A trained mind develops this natural tendency toward aligned decisions. Napoleon Hill reinforced that indecision is a habit, just like decision is a habit. Anyone who does not train the mind to decide quickly and firmly ends up training, without realizing it, the habit of delay. And delay is one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage. Notice how this shows up in daily life. The person knows what should be done, but spends too much time thinking. When action finally happens, energy is already depleted. The trained mind works the opposite way. It decides with less internal cost and preserves energy for execution. That creates consistency, not anxiety. Jesus operated exactly at this level. He did not over-explain. He did not hesitate under pressure. He said, "Follow me," and moved forward. This was not rigidity, it was clarity of identity. In John 8:12, "I am the light of the world," there is an internal statement so solid that external action flows without hesitation. Clarity comes before movement. Now observe an important detail. When a trained mind takes leadership, the environment starts responding differently. People sense firmness. Opportunities appear with more definition. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped broadcasting confusion. Life responds to the level of internal direction you sustain. Napoleon Hill said the world cooperates with those who know exactly what they want, not through magic, but because clear decisions attract compatible circumstances. A confused mind sends mixed signals. A trained mind sends command. The Bible reinforces this when it says, Proverbs 16:3, "Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established." Commitment here is not just prayer, it is internal alignment before action. It is training the mind to operate in coherence. Plans fail less when the mind is organized. See how this destroys the idea that consistency is heavy. It is not. Heavy is living in constant internal conflict. Heavy is deciding everything from zero every day. When mental training stabilizes, life becomes simpler, not easier but clearer, and clarity reduces friction. Napoleon Hill stated that internal clarity is the greatest competitive advantage anyone can develop, because everything starts there. Those who do not train the mind try to control the external world. Those who do train the mind control the internal world and let the external adjust. Now face a difficult truth honestly. Very few people reach this level because most quit before the pattern consolidates. They stop while training still requires conscious effort. They do not cross the phase where training begins to return energy instead of consuming it. And because of that, they conclude that it doesn't work. Once you understand this, you see that abandoning training early is not neutrality. It is returning to autopilot, and autopilot has already shown where it leads. Now that this is clear, continuing without direction becomes a conscious choice. This is exactly why content like this creates discomfort in people who prefer to live reacting. Direction exposes the absence of it, and not everyone is willing to face that. If you are still here, something has already shifted in your perception. Most people do not sustain this level of attention, and now that you recognize the value of daily training, supporting this kind of clarity is no longer optional. This like helps this content reach people who still haven't realized they are living without mental leadership. This is not about supporting a video, it is about amplifying a pattern that very few teach directly. Now hold this idea firmly. Training the mind every day is not just another habit. It is the habit that organizes all others. When the mind assumes leadership, everything else starts to follow, and this is exactly where most people stop, while a few continue consolidating a pattern that changes everything. If this level of direction makes sense to you, stay here. This channel exists for people who decided to stop reacting and start leading their own minds.